We call it the wrap-up smear. If you want to talk politics, we call it the wrap-up smear. You smear somebody with falsehoods and all the rest, and then you merchandise it. And then you write it, and they'll say, see, it's reported in the press that this, and this. So they have that validation that the press reported the smear, and then it's called the wrap-up smear. Now I'm going to merchandise the press's report on the smear that we made. And it's a tactic, and it's self-evident. But a bloodbath, what does that mean? He's going to exact a bloodbath?
He is endorsing political violence.
Says that he was talking about an economic bloodbath.
Yeah.
I don't know if I buy that.
Hold up. Wait a minute. Something ain't right.
He understands the way I deal. Those big monster car manufacturing plants that you're building in Mexico right now, and you think you're going to get that, you're going to not hire Americans, and you're going to sell the cars to us. Now, we're going to put a 100% tariff on every single car that comes across the line, and you're not going to be able to sell those cars. If I get elected, now, if I don't get elected, it's going to be a bloodbath for the whole... That's going to be the least of it. It's going to be a bloodbath for the country. That'll be the least of it.
Because he's even predicting a bloodbath. What does that mean? He's going to exact a bloodbath? There's something wrong here. How respectful I am of the American people and their goodness. But how much more do they have to see from him to understand that this isn't what our country is about? Praising Hitler, praising the Russians.
So Donald Trump is now threatening the American people and people who don't like him. At his rally today, he said that there's going to be, quote, a bloodbath if he loses in November. It's crazy. Take a look at the clip.
And you're not going to be able to sell those cars. If I get elected, now if I don't get elected, it's going to be a bloodbath for the whole... That's going to be the least of it. It's going to be a bloodbath for the country. That'll be the least of it. But they're not going to sell those cars. They're building massive factories. A friend of mine...
Yeah, a bloodbath, according to Donald Trump. Do you folks see what he's doing here? He's trying to scare people into supporting him or staying quiet and not making their voices heard. And to that, I say, screw you, Donald Trump. You don't get to try to scare the American people into submission so you can achieve your lifelong dream of becoming a dictator. Like, this is exactly what authoritarian leaders do. When you look at dictatorships around the world and in history, one of the ways they maintain power is by scaring the people, making sure that they don't speak up against them and their reign. That's what Donald Trump wants to achieve, and that's what he's saying here. We cannot allow this guy back into office in 2024. Our democracy quite literally depends on it.
Able to sell those cars. If I get elected, now if I don't get elected, it's going to be a bloodbath for the whole... That's going to be the least of it. It's going to be a bloodbath for the country. That'll be the least of it.
Now, Mano, it was unclear exactly what Donald Trump was referring to when he made those comments. However, the Trump campaign later tried to clarify those remarks, telling us that he was referring to the auto industry and he was warning of an economic bloodbath. But we did see the Biden campaign immediately jump on those remarks. We heard this from one of their spokespeople. They said, quote, he wants another January 6th, but the American people are going to give him another electoral defeat this November because they continue to reject his extremism, his affection for violence, and his thirst for revenge. Now, the Trump campaign argued that the Biden campaign statement was being a bit deceptive. And we heard this from Stephen Chung, one of his top advisors. They told us, quote, crooked Joe Biden and his campaign are engaging in deceptively out of context editing that puts Roman Polanski to shame. So clearly different takes on those remarks. But as you mentioned, a very dark speech from the former president here in Ohio.
But as Politico.com reports tonight on the, quote, bloodbath at the RNC,
Headlines calling it a, quote, bloodbath.
Be a bloodbath. Not only is it going to be a bloodbath, but after they leave New Hampshire, it's a bloodbath on her home turf. That's really tough. Trump has left a lot of corpses in his wake. I mean, we can count the bodies.
As part of the, quote, MAGA drive to take over Maricopa County. And the headline refers to it as an impending bloodbath.
Columnist Charles Blow has a new piece for the New York Times entitled A Biden Bloodbath.
2018 midterms, you can bet that they 100% are fearing a slaughter. In fact, the word bloodbath and massacre come up frequently.
The Republican Party will be destroyed. It's going to be a bloodbath.
There's going to be a bloodbath one way or the other.
Bloodbath for Bernie Sanders.
It's been a bloodbath there, shaping up to be a bloodbath.
Head off a bloodbath in next year's crucial midterm.
Off-year elections are often a bloodbath.
This week's bloodbath for Democrats.
A bloodbath at the ballot box.
There could be a Republican bloodbath.
They'll talk about a bloodbath.
It's a bloodbath. I have to talk about you. And
It's going to be a bloodbath all day long.
Is in for a bloodbath.
Hasn't been a bloodbath on the way down.
Donald Trump bloodbath.
Be a bloodbath.
Predicted to be a bloodbath.
May not be the bloodbath.
It would be a bloodbath.
More of a bloodbath.
It's going to be a bloodbath in November.
Possible Biden bloodbath this November.
A bloodbath on Wall Street.
There's going to be a bloodbath
in Alabama into a bloodbath.
Obviously, there was a bloodbath. It was a bloodbath. We're down 800 points.
This bloodbath at Department of Homeland Security.
And it's a bloodbath today.
There was going to be this bloodbath.
Election bloodbath.
It could be a bloodbath for them. Bloodbath, possibly. Bloodbath that went through with the Attorney General.
Bloodbath 99 days out.
The bloodbath is going to look like
Presided over a bloodbath in the diplomatic corps.
Absolute, in my opinion, bloodbath. The Democrats are
Calling it ticket sales turned into a bloodbath.
Ticket sales for singer Taylor Swift's latest tour.
it's safe to
Predicting a bloodbath. What does that mean? He's going to exact a bloodbath? There's something wrong here. How respectful I am of the American people and their goodness. But how much more do they have to see from him to understand that this isn't what our country is about?
Do you hear the panic? A bloodbath. Zero policy. So they're just coming after you and I. That's it. Zero policy. They are panicking. And they should.
China now is building a couple of massive plants where they're going to build the cars in Mexico and they think that they're going to sell those cars into the United States with no tax at the border. Let me tell you something to China. If you're listening, President Xi, and you and I are friends, but he understands the way I deal, those big monster car manufacturing plants that you're building in Mexico right now, and you think you're going to get that, you're going to not hire Americans, and you're going to sell the cars to us. No, we're going to put a 100% tariff on every single car that comes across the line, and you're not going to be able to sell those cars. If I get elected, now if I don't get elected, it's going to be a bloodbath for the whole... That's going to be the least of it. It's going to be a bloodbath for the country. That'll be the least of it. But they're not going to sell those cars. They're building massive factories. A friend of mine, all he does is build car manufacturing plants. He's the biggest in the world. I mean, honestly, I joke about it. He can't walk across the street. In that way, he's like Biden. But for building a plant, he can do the greatest plants in the world, right? That's all he cares about. I said, I'd like to see one of your plants recently. I said, I'd like to see, where can we go? Well, we have to travel to Mexico. I said, why Mexico? He said, because that's where the big plants are building. China's building really big plants in Mexico, and Mexico's building. What about here? Well, we're building much smaller plants here. Can you believe it?
What can be gleaned from Trump's latest comments? For that, we are joined by News Nation politics and economics contributor Mick Mulvaney, who once served as White House Chief of Staff under Donald Trump. Mick, it's good to see you this evening. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, Natasha. Happy St. Patrick's Day.
Yeah, happy St. Patrick's Day to you as well. Let's talk about this. The Biden campaign releasing a statement condemning those comments, saying, quote, he wants another January 6th, but the American people are going to give him another electoral defeat this November because they continue to reject his extremism. Mick, what was your first reaction when hearing those remarks?
Yeah, my first reaction was actually go watch the entire tape. I'm a little disappointed we only played the clip at the very end. If you put it in context, and I didn't realize this until I went to go do the research, it's a conversation about Chinese automakers trying to use Mexico to get cars into the United States. And Trump said he wasn't going to allow it because it would be bad for American workers. But if he lost the election, it would be a bloodbath, implying be a bloodbath in the American automobile industry. So I'm a little disappointed in the press in not showing that thing in context. Look, Donald Trump is capable of saying just about anything. There is no question about that. And I think what folks have come to learn is either you think he speaks literally or figuratively. And that's sort of what I thought this conversation was going to be about before I actually went to go see the whole clip. But if you watch the entire clip, it's clear in context this is related to a discussion question about the Chinese influence in the American automotive industry, which would be a big deal in Ohio, which is where he was today campaigning.
Okay, so in your mind, this comment was limited entirely to the auto industry, not comments implying potentially another January 6th.
Yeah, I think if anybody would actually go watch the entire, I don't know, it doesn't take but about 30 seconds to look at the whole clip. You'd look at it and go, well, okay, yeah. Is it good language for a president of the United States? No, look, and I always struggle with the language that Donald Trump used. But I also know that he doesn't speak literally all the time. In this particular sense, I think it was probably not the best language, but certainly not what the Democrats are making it out to be. It's not calling for warfare if he loses the election, which is what a lot of folks on the left seem to be wanting to make it into.
Yeah, okay, Mick, I appreciate that context. And you know this man personally. You understand his motivations. You know his mind. Are you concerned about another January 6th, regardless of these comments?
No, these comments have nothing to do with the January 6th. Am I concerned generally with him not accepting a loss? Yes, and here's why. The people that are around him now, he doesn't have anybody anymore, Natasha, who would tell him what he doesn't want to hear. And the folks in the immediate inner circle are like, yes, Mr. President, I think that's a great idea. And you can't get good information. When you are president of the United States, you're one of the most isolated and insulated people in the world. And if you don't have close advisors willing to tell you straight truths, that can be a very, very damaging sort of situation. That bothers me more than anything else. It certainly bothers me a heck of a lot more than this video today from Ohio.
Okay, I appreciate that. I do want to ask about Republican Senator Bill Cassidy. He says that whether Trump was talking about political violence or if he was talking about the auto industry and the economy, his word choice is still not going to sit well with some. Let's take a listen to that.
The general tone of the speech is why many Americans continue to wonder, should President Trump be president? That kind of rhetoric, it's always on the edge, maybe doesn't cross, maybe does, depending upon your perspective.
Do you agree with this?
I think that's a fair criticism, Natasha. As I just said a moment ago, the language itself is unpresidential. And when a presidential candidate uses that type of language, it's going to give the other side the opportunity to sort of turn it into something else. And at the end of the day, perception is reality oftentimes in politics. And if you are a swing voter sitting home and you're not going to take the time maybe to watch the whole speech, or you don't really care, but you see, wow, Donald Trump is calling for a bloodbath, that will turn off those independent and swing voters. And Trump needs to be aware of that. I think he's got to make a decision. Does he want to try and reach out to folks in the center? Does he want to try and reach out to swing voters, to impressionable voters? Or is he just trying to make sure his people show up and he's counting on his base to deliver him a victory? Right now, it looks like it's the latter, and I don't know if that's the right call for him to make or not.